All right, cool. I just gotta cook up the parlay for you real quick. That can be done easily.
All right, no worries. Well, I officially hit the go live notification. As you know, I gotta just make sure I get the edit stuff down. Do you guys need a
Mhm.
link for the stream, or do you have it like the channel?
Hold on. What is it? 511.
No, it's don't sleep on special teams.
Oh,
But if you go
okay.
to the Hanson 511, there'll be a
That's
little
what I was
link to yeah.
What? Oh, here we are. All right, word.
Alrighty. And sports, boom, save. Go to YouTube. Nope, press the wrong button. Meet that. Boom, there we go. Alright, so I'm going to say it off for starters. There might be some slight visual and or audio issues. I've been dealing with laptop problems, which I have off to the right for that I stream OBS with. Got a whole sorts of stuff going on. Literally couldn't stream on Wednesday last week because it was so bad. But here we are. Last week's guests, this week's guests are here live, ready to go to talk some football. You guys have seen both of them before. But here we go. First and foremost, how's everyone doing in your most important fantasy league?
No, we want to talk about it. What do you mean by important? Dollar bills
Yeah,
or
the one you care about the most, the one that has the biggest buy-in, whatever it is. For me, it's my 14-man league. Yeah, I'm in a streamer league, but like that's secondary. I'm kind of dominating that, whatever. But I would rather come in like fourth place in my big money league than win my streamer league.
yeah,
So
yeah, not great in my big money league, but not bad in my high school league. That's the bragging rights one. So
yeah, the bragging rights league. What about you, Dave?
I'm doing pretty well. So I had a big win this week against the divisional opponent. So my chances of making the playoffs increased by about 15 points or so, from like 70 to 85. So I'm in a pretty good spot for now. Got some non-conference opponents this week, for the next couple weeks actually. So it'd be nice to rack up a couple more wins before the
Yeah,
season's over.
absolutely. Still think it's crazy that you have divisions in fantasy, but so be it. Um, but yeah, anywho, let's get underway because we obviously have a little bit more to talk about today because we got two guests instead of one. So who wants to take the floor and talk about their one of the first two games they want to talk about?
doesn't matter to me.
All right, Jake. Sounds like it's gonna be you.
All right, cool. Sounds good. I'll start with the one I picked from the early window on here, the Browns and the Saints. I picked this one because I couldn't believe that the Saints were home underdogs with the love Jameis, but with the Jameis Winston Browns coming into New Orleans, I could not believe that they were underdogs in this game. It did stay close early on. The Browns kind of managed to hang in there. Jameis threw two 500-yard touchdowns to Jerry Judy. Just kidding. It was just one and then a sideline one to Elijah Moore. But
Yeah,
they hung in there for a little bit. Nick Chubb really has not been able to get going since coming back from the injury.
has
And that's
not.
probably hurt Cleveland the most with a backup quarterback being in.
Chubb
Um,
and Jerome Ford not playing well either.
but yeah, he wasn't doing
Well,
well. That's
to
true.
be
He was
fair,
out for
Jerome
4 weeks.
Ford
Chubb came back.
did miss a couple weeks.
Right.
Did he? Who else played?
Well, I
Pierre
mean, like
Strong?
Jerome Ford, like at the beginning of the season, I think he was expected to have more of a role while Chubb was coming back.
Yeah, I mean, week one, I think he had a fair role. But then they brought in great value Derrick Henry, and he kind of did not play well, but they hammered him.
Oh, Deonta Foreman.
Yeah.
I got what you're saying there for a second. um, but I mean, the big highlight of this game was Taysom Hill going absolutely crazy,
Yeah.
playing snaps at pretty much every position on the field, threw a couple passes. 7 carries for just under 140 yards is insane with 3 touchdowns.
Hat
Caught
trick.
8 passes for 50 yards on top of that. which was insane, just a crazy game. And the Marquez Valdez-Scantling revival story, because he couldn't get it done with quarterbacks like Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers. So obviously he's going to go crazy with Derek Carr.
He just needed a quarterback comp to his wide receiver level.
Exactly. That's what it is. But yeah, I mean, the Browns, Jerry Jeudy finally probably had his biggest game of his career, but otherwise it just doesn't seem like they can figure it out in the passing game. Jameis was even relatively mistake-free, didn't throw any picks, almost 400 yards and 2 touchdowns. But they can't figure it out on both facets of the game to this point, and that's just going to continue to hurt him down the stretch.
Yeah, Browns D, sneaky bad. You wouldn't expect it.
Yeah, I mean, the talent's there. I just think they're having trouble hanging in games when their offense isn't setting them up in good field position.
Yeah, no.
And they were highly ranked, that defense, going into the season. They did well last year. I think a lot of people had high hopes for them this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they played well early on, too, but I think
Right.
they've just kind of hit a wall where it's like, all right, we can only do so much when the offense doesn't move the ball.
No,
And
exactly.
it's just a lost season at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I do
Exactly.
think, though, in the very limited role, because Jerome Ford only had, like, 8 or 10 snaps or something like that. I don't know. It was a low number of snaps.
He only had 5 carries from what I'm seeing here. No catches. So,
No, he had-
4 catches.
Yeah, he
49
had, like,
yards.
1 carry and 4
It's still-
catches.
It's
but-
still a very limited role. Like you'd like
Yeah.
to see him spell Chubb a little bit more, especially where he's.
He had 6 fantasy points just in that such limited role. So, like, they might expand him more next week because this was his first game back in, like, 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, I mean, that definitely was a very, fantasy-wise, a very interesting game. And I pretty much know, like, I know, like, 8 or 9 different people I spoke with, they, like, everyone said that, like, either, like, pretty much everyone in, like, all these, like, 7, 8, 9 different leagues, every league started Taysom Hill. I don't know how everyone knew, but, like, it's crazy.
I played Colin in a league this week. He had Taysom Hill on his bench, and he still put up 180 points on me.
Oh my goodness, that's crazy.
Unreal.
Crazy.
I was kind of the beneficiary. I didn't have Taysom Hill, but my opponent had Alvin Kamara, so that.
Oh yeah, there you go.
helped me.
Yeah, no, that is
It
a
was
good
like
one.
having Taysom Hill.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's gonna be interesting. Browns and Saints are interesting fantasy values just all around the board for them going forward. But I wouldn't worry too much for them. I mean, outside of like the defenses for both teams, offensive wise, I think like if you're in a pinch, like this is a big bye week. I'm pretty sure for a lot of people.
Yeah,
like
Elijah Moore is a sneaky good play. He's been a good reception volume guy.
Yeah.
Cedric Tillman's kind of been a little touchdown dependent, but he's still been good because he's been scoring a lot of touchdowns. So.
No, absolutely.
I don't know if I rely on Jerry
Njoku's been solid.
He had a good, I didn't realize he had 9 for 81 this week.
Yeah, dude, he like either gets you 7 or 16. Like it's either or. So like,
much.
and as a tight end, you're okay with both.
Right. High floor. We'll take that.
Exactly. Anything else you wanted to plug in on this game?
No, just a sneaky Kadarius Toney carry in this game for -7 yards.
He played.
He apparently, and he didn't get a catch, but he had a carry at some point in the game.
Wow.
Is he actually on the Browns?
He is, yeah.
Wow, I
That's
did not know that.
crazy.
Two-time
And
Super Bowl champion, Kadarius.
Yeah,
Toney.
yep. I'd be curious to see if they stick with Jameis going forward as well, or if they go to DTR or Bailey Zappi.
I think Zappy's on the Jets now.
Is he? He did sign with the Browns after he was on the Chiefs. I don't know where.
Yeah,
he is now.
I'm pretty sure his practice squad signed with the Jets.
Zappy
But-
Fever's taking over the country.
Yeah, I guess
Honestly.
so.
But all right, let's move on forward. Dave, if you want to talk about one of your 2 games, gloss it over.
Yeah, so this particular game was intriguing from a fantasy perspective. That's mostly why I picked this game. It's Detroit and Jacksonville. Obviously, the Lions are very, very good. The Jaguars are very, very bad. There was no doubt at all who was going to win this game. It was going to be the Lions. Jacksonville had Mac Jones in there, and he didn't throw a touchdown pass. But this is where I found some pretty interesting nuggets here. So Travis Etienne Jr., he's had a really tough year. He was 12 of 27 today, on Sunday, and he hasn't been able to repeat some of the play that he had last year. He was emerging to be a pretty solid running back 1 or RB2 for that matter. This year, though, Travis Etienne, he's been held out of the end zone since week 2.
Oh, wow.
Only 2 touchdowns this year, and a lot of people were drafting him early thinking he could be that solid RB2, and that just hasn't been the case. He's been very inefficient as well, hasn't even passed 70 rushing yards in a single game. So that was unfortunate for the Jaguars, but I think they did find something kind of interesting in Brian Thomas Jr. And so even though this game was kind of lost, Brian Thomas Jr. still managed to put up 5 catches for 82 yards. He was targeted 7 times, and
Not bad.
he has 4 touchdowns on the season, and he really assumed that wide receiver 1 role. I think some people thought Christian Kirk was going to revert back to that wide receiver 1 now that Calvin Ridley was out in Tennessee, but it looks like Brian Thomas Jr. just jumped right over him. Kirk really wasn't producing too much this year, but in my league, which is in ESPN league, Brian Thomas Jr. is the wide receiver 9.
Really?
So even though it's been a rough year for Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars passing game in their offense, looks like they found something pretty special in Brian Thomas Jr. Now for the Lions, I think this game it's a microcosm for what you can do with anyone on the Lions, really. I mean, Jared Goff right now is quarterback 6, and on ESPN, he's only rostered on 66% of teams. So for teams that might have been bitten bad by the injury bug, or maybe you drafted Anthony Richardson, he's been a little underwhelming, you can still get a top 10 fantasy quarterback. And if you take away, and that's including that one game last week against Houston when Jared Goff threw 5 interceptions. So he's been solid. And also, you can get a touchdown just about every week on either Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, or Amon-Ra St. Brown. Jahmyr Gibbs right now is an RB4. He has, 2, 4, 6, 8 rushing touchdowns plus a receiving touchdown. David Montgomery has been a great running back as well. I'm just pulling up his touchdowns this year. Yeah, and David Montgomery has 4, 6, 7, 8. He has 10 touchdowns on the ground this year. So
yeah, they're running
backs. And then
backs.
Amon-Ra St. Brown is Amon-Ra St. Brown. But I think if you have Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown, you can start those guys regularly every week and expect them to have a big role in the offense. And even Jared Goff is like I said earlier, is a solid fantasy player. He's got plenty of targets there in Detroit, and I think it's a very dynamic Lions offense. And I think if you're an owner of any of those Lions, you're in a very good spot.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I literally wanted to draft Gibbs and Dave Montgomery, but I ended up getting the 4th pick, so that went out the window. I literally, if I had like the 12th, 13th, or 14th, I was gonna take Gibbs in the 1st round or early 2nd, and then late 3rd or early 4th, take D-Mon and be like, I'm writing it out. But I also really wanted Goff, which I got him in the 9th round, like 2nd to last quarterback off the board.
Steal.
Yeah, and I just wrote him out the whole season. But yeah, I mean, you're an embarrassment of riches if you have any Lions players. Like even Jameson Williams, you know he's gonna pop off and win you a couple weeks.
Eventually, yes, he's the prototypical boom bust player. But
yeah, but you gotta ride him out.
I mean, he had 4 catches for 124 yards in this past game. So I mean, that's incredible if you're able to use him to fill in here and there on a bye week.
Yeah.
And Gibbs obviously is a very dynamic player as a pass catcher. I was a little hesitant on him to start the year because my thought was they're going to use David Montgomery more for those goal line roles. But even though Montgomery is the go-to guy for the goal line, Jahmyr Gibbs still a very valuable player to have in your lineup.
Absolutely.
And I remember he went like 7th or 8th overall in my league. I was surprised by that, but he's been terrific. He's made a great jump, and that Lions offense is scary.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, Jake, you got something to say?
I was just going to say the only guy that's really been left out of all that is Sam Laporta, which is kind of disappointing for anybody that he was drafted very high, probably top 3 tight end in almost every league.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was very surprising.
I guess it's too many mouths to feed. Is just the product of that, and he's kind of the one that's not benefiting from that. But
Yeah, I mean, he has been hurt and he's missed a few games.
right,
But
yeah,
like, I
Brock
mean,
Wright's out here catching touchdowns.
yeah, exactly. You assume if Laporta was healthy, those are going to him.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and then on the Jag side, I mean, I think the only viable fantasy option is just Evan Ingram.
He even didn't do that much. I mean, when with Mac Jones starting, nobody's a viable option.
No,
Yeah,
exactly.
no.
But even with like Trevor Lawrence, I would like fade it.
Right.
I faded
Yeah, he was
ETN this year. I faded Kirk this year. Faded Trevor Lawrence unless like I played him when Goff was on bye, but like that.
Yeah, I had him as a backup.
Yeah, that was it. Like that's the only time I'm going to use Goff. But like I faded everyone. I was like Evan Ingram, he'll get you 5 for 46, and like tight ends are so tough. So like I think he's the only viable option.
And he's a great bargain tight end too.
Exactly. Well, all right, I'm gonna go talk about one of my games. Bills Chiefs. Did either of you guys have that? I don't think so.
No.
No, I did
Okay.
not.
Fire away.
Arguably one of the best games of the year, in my opinion. I mean, it was 30-21. You like when you hear like best games, you think like that Chiefs Rams game all those years ago, but 30-21. I still think it was a good game. Mahomes 2 more interceptions thrown. He only had 196 passing yards. They didn't really even have the running game. Kareem Hunt only ran 60 yards. Xavier Worthy did have 4 for 61 and a touchdown. Someone dropped him in my league. Like, someone in my league dropped him. Granted, it's the kid who's in second place, who's has like 1,700 points for already. So like, he didn't really need him. But like, someone had to have just been on the app when it happened because within the minute, someone picked him up.
Wow.
Yeah. D-Hop had the D-Hop day I expected him to have with the Chiefs, 3 for 29. And then he just have a bunch of other people with like 1, 2, or 3 catches. So, I mean, that Chiefs offense, I'm interested on. I mean, it's a cheat. They're the Chiefs, so you're going to keep them in fantasy. But they're not doing that great. But they somehow keep winning.
Yeah, they've always found a way to keep winning, but something about the offense, it just looks a little bit disjointed. It doesn't have quite the tempo and the flow that it normally has. It's something a little different this year.
Yeah. I think it's Travis Kelce. I think he's the problem. And I'm not trying to make
he's all done.
I'm not trying to make a Taylor Swift thing either. I just think he doesn't care anymore, and he's like just making the offense disjointed.
But we had 2 touchdowns this week. Leominster native Noah Gray.
I know. That's what I was gonna say.
You're in deep dynasty leagues. He might be a guy to hold on to because he might be able to hold that same role as Kelce going forward.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I have a friend who's in a 32-man league. Noah Grace is tight end,
Jeez.
and he calls him a darling. But over to the winning team. Josh Allen had 262, a touchdown, and a really bad pick. He also had 12 carries, 55 yards, and arguably one of the best rushing touchdowns of the year because he broke 2 tackles and did a spin move on someone, and it was
That was cool.
Safety dead in the eye and just ran right through him into the end zone.
Exactly, and like, dude, there's Hero by the Foo Fighters, Higher by Creed. I've seen so many things on Twitter of just like that run with music playing over it. It's amazing. And then you got James Cook, who I actually did not do a lot this game. He had 5 catches for 7 yards, so like that PPR wise, that bails him out. But he only had 9 rushes, 20 yards. Did also have 2 touchdowns. So
2 touchdowns though, yeah.
Fantasy wise, he had a good day, but his numbers were bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I have it right here. He only had 9 carries for 20 yards. Obviously, that's really inefficient, but those 2 touchdowns were huge.
Yeah.
He's a good presence down there, and he's taken some touchdowns away from Josh Allen, especially with some of those iffy receivers that the Bills have as well.
I mean, without those 2 touchdowns, he has 6 fantasy points. Bad day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, iffy receivers, I agree with you. Curtis Samuel did step up a little bit. He had 5 for 58, a touchdown, and Khalil Shakir had 8. He had 8 catches. I believe it was on 9 targets. He has like a 90% catch rate. It's this season. Yeah, and
that hit that he took across the middle on 3rd down.
Oh,
that catch was,
I thought he was paralyzed.
That was a beauty.
I thought he was paralyzed.
Yeah.
But he had 70 receiving yards, so that's not terrible. You know what I mean? PPR league, that's a pretty decent day. Amari Cooper, expected more out of him. Yeah, Dawson Knox. Yeah, 2 for 55 for Amari Cooper. I was expecting him to have more
Takes
more
away
catches.
a number one corner though.
Yeah,
so.
that's true.
It'll be interesting to see when everyone's healthy. When Amari Cooper gets out there, you got Dalton Kincaid coming back, Keon Coleman.
Mm-hmm.
Really, all year, Josh Allen hasn't been able to play with all of those guys kind of in the same lineup at any one time. So, they're getting hot this time of year, and they only have 2 losses right now. They're 1 game behind the Chiefs, and
Yeah.
so they might end up going on a run with all those guys. That offense might start clicking, and it might be the year that Buffalo breaks through.
Yeah, as a Patriots fan, it's crazy for me to say, but I'm rooting for the Bills this year to win it all. But that's
Hey,
all.
they were our punching bag for years. Everyone deserves a shot, right?
Exactly. But that's all I got for this game. Jake, if you want to go into your second game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just gonna say, just all those injuries and Josh Allen getting it done against the undefeated Chiefs without those guys playing, it just makes it all that more impressive.
Yeah, no
Absolutely.
Kincaid, no Coleman. So definitely.
So jumping into the Chargers and the Bengals here, this was another really exciting game. Usually on these, was it Sunday night or Monday night?
Sunday night,
right?
No, it was Monday.
Sunday,
No, it was
either
Sunday
one.
night. Sunday night.
Yeah, either one. With these night games, I usually find myself like right after halftime, kind of nodding off on my couch. But this game, I was like alive for the whole game because it was so exciting. I really thought this was going to be an unreal, patented Joe Burrow comeback. But it just fell short when they couldn't. I mean, I think they kind of let J.K. Dobbins score in the end there so they could have a chance to try to match it. But
Yeah.
just wasn't enough time on the clock for him to get it done. But it was an absolute quarterback showcase. Joe Burrow went for 350 and 3 touchdowns. Justin Herbert went for just under 302 touchdowns. He dropped some dimes in there too. The ball to QJ in the end zone was crazy.
Huge.
Chase Brown has kind of solidified himself as a number 1 back in this league for sure.
A year too late for me.
Yeah, yeah.
We all know me dropping Kyron Williams week 1 to pick up Chase Brown last year. Yep.
Oh, man.
I had a good feeling. I didn't think. I mean, Zach Moss is solid, but he's not like a bona fide number 1 running back. So
Yeah.
I had a feeling Chase Brown would be able to take over that backfield. J.K. Dobbins, outside of the 2 touchdowns, kind of same thing as James Cook. Really kind of a disappointing performance if he didn't have both of those scores. He had 11 carries for 56 yards, and then he had 1 catch for 3 yards outside of those 2 touchdowns. So not too crazy. Justin Herbert actually led the team in rushing with 65 yards.
Well, the funny
Gus
thing
Edwards has done nothing this year.
The funny thing about JK, he didn't touch the ball once in the first quarter.
Did he really not? I actually didn't notice that.
I have him in my streamer league, and I was like, oh, I'm down 2. I have 4 people to go. My opponent's done. And I look in the second quarter. I was like, why is the score not moving? And I look, I was like, oh, JK just hasn't gotten a single snap yet. So I don't know if that was like a disciplinary thing or not. But yeah, that definitely showed like and affected his stat line for the week.
That's a scary thing to see if you're in a close game. I know you weren't in a close game, but when you're expecting that one guy.
In the passing game, Chase Brown on that side too. He also had 5 catches for 57 yards on top of 86 rushing yards. So he's always going to be a viable option going forward to start. As well as Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Didn't matter who you started. You had a good game either way. T had 9 for $150 and a touchdown. Jamar Chase 775, 2 touchdowns. So it doesn't matter between those 2 guys who you start. They're probably both going to ball out going forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Jamar Chase, he got off to a little bit of a slow start in that game. I think for the first half, things were pretty quiet, but once that fourth quarter came around, he started racking up the receptions and finding the end zone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can only hold him down for so long.
He's becoming the quintessential. He's a second half fantasy player.
Yeah. And then the Chargers just find ways to get it done with different guys. This was a big Lad McConkey game, but he didn't score. Quentin Johnston has been a lot better this year compared to what he was last year. He's kind of figuring it out, but he is a little touchdown dependent though.
Yeah, I was gonna say
catches for 48 yards and a score.
For QJ, I picked him up about a month ago, and he scored in every game since I picked him up. He's had one game where he's had a lot of catches and yards when he got me like 25 points. Yep. But other than that, he's getting me like 9 to 14 purely just because he scores, and it's like I'll take it. Yeah. Especially with
That's
me.
That's a great floor.
Yeah, exactly. where I've been with injuries, like I'll take a 9 to 14 guaranteed touchdown out of QJ.
And sneaky game out of what feels like a typical guy you'd play in your flex here and there, Matt, and Will Disley, or not your flex, tight end as like a bye week guy.
Yeah.
4 for 80 and a touchdown.
Yeah, he did have a few moments this week.
He did. He was 2 times down the seam. They just left him wide open. But a guy who I thought was going to have a good season was Josh Palmer, and he's been really disappointing this year. I thought he was going to be like the number 2 on that team, and he just hasn't been.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about Josh Palmer. He fits the build, and he looks like he's going to be a good receiver. He's just not.
Yeah.
He's just not putting up numbers.
But this Chargers team has been surprising to me. I mean, there's not much different about him from last year, but Jim Harbaugh's made a world of difference for him, especially defensively. The defense has been insane. They were the worst defense in the league last year. They were horrible, and I mean, like you said, they held Jamar Chase down the whole first half. Like, they've just been insane on defense this year, which has been very surprising.
Yeah, going into this game, they were the number 2 defense in fantasy, only behind the Broncos.
Yeah, they didn't make, especially they have Eli Apple. I didn't even know that.
What, the Chargers?
Chargers do, yeah.
Yeah, they have Khalil Mack too, but he missed that game.
He's been hurt. I mean, Bosa's been kind of a non-factor. Bud Dupree has had a little bit of a resurgence this year, but it's nothing crazy.
Yeah,
but it's kind of been the DBs that have been the difference. Elijah Molden has been up making a ton of picks. Derwin James is still Derwin James. He had 10 tackles, half a sack this week.
Do they still have Asante Samuel Jr.?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. I don't see him in this.
Yeah, I wonder if he's hurt.
Box score here, so he might not be healthy, but
yeah,
he is definitely on the roster.
Yeah, I mean, just what a difference!
Like Titan rejects on this team that are playing well.
Yeah, I mean, it's just what a difference coaching staff can make.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And Harbaugh, what I didn't realize, brought his DC from Michigan with him, and I guess that's the guy that's making the calls.
Yeah, smart.
Yeah, I mean, the Chargers they have Brandon Staley and Anthony Lynn. That goes back, to probably like 2016, 2017. So, yeah, finally they got that good coaching.
Yeah, a couple of really bad coaches. I thought, oh my god, Brandon Staley's probably the worst coach I've ever seen.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Anything else you got to put it on the game?
I think that's all set with that one.
All right. We are running a little tight on time-wise, so Dave, if you want to quickly go through yours, and I'll quickly go through my second game, and then we'll move to the next subject.
Yeah, so just a few words about this one. I got the Monday night game between the Texans and the Cowboys. Again, a game that was never really close, but some interesting takeaways here is even though the Cooper Rush experience has not been good for Dallas, one person who you can count on is CeeDee Lamb. He's been producing pretty much the entire season, and while that Cowboys offense has been really inconsistent as a whole, CeeDee Lamb has been terrific. He's the wide receiver 3 in my league, and even this past week against Houston, he had 12 targets, although he was held out of the end zone. And last week against Philly, even though he only had 6 catches for 20 yards, he still got 10 targets. He's the only player on this Dallas roster you can put in. Rico Dowdle has been a little bit of a disappointment. He was expected to be maybe like the 1A type running back this year.
Yeah.
And Ezekiel Elliott, when they brought Zeke Elliott in, we weren't expecting the darling Zeke Elliott, who was a top 5 pick, but we thought that he would at least be used by the end zone and as a receiver.
Yeah,
he's been neither of those.
You were expecting how he was with the Pats back in Dallas, and he's been half of that at best.
Yeah, like a goal line back, something. Touchdown vulture guy like Roshan Johnson, something like that, but nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we all knew what Zeke could do in the passing game, and he hasn't had more than 16 receiving yards all season, no receiving touchdowns. So might be the end of the road for Zeke.
Yeah.
But if you had Nico Collins in your league, you were really excited on that first play of the game when he rattled off that 75-yard touchdown, only to have that called back and not have another catch on the remainder of the drive. But it was good to see Nico Collins back in there. He had a couple nice plays, a little bit of a quiet day, but
Yeah.
hamstring injuries are tough. It's gonna take a little bit to get back from that, maybe a game or two to get back to full speed on that. But Joe Mixon has been absolutely incredible for that Texans team, and I remember being a little bit surprised by that move just because of how well C.J. Stroud and those receivers looked. But Joe Mixon has been incredible. He's scored in all but one game this year, at least one rushing touchdown, and he's put up, you know, he's he's been a bell cow really. Against Indy in week 1, he put up 30 carries. Week 7 against Green Bay, 25. Week 8, Indy, 25. Jets, 24. Lions, 25. Cowboys, 20. So he's getting a ton of usage.
Oh yeah.
And so I think we were all expecting kind of a bigger second year leap from CJ Stroud. But when Joe Mixon's performing like that with such good efficiency and with uh, being such a force in the red zone, then you got to stick with Joe Mixon. And unfortunately, CJ doesn't have the best fantasy numbers, but he's still doing a great job as a second-year QB in the league.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I think Joe Mixon's gonna be a league winner type player this year. I mean, like
Absolutely.
this deep in the year, look at every team, like if you go through and look at all the teams that have Joe Mixon, I bet you they're the top, at least the top half of their league. Like I think he's gonna be the reason why a lot of teams win their fantasy championships this year.
And he's such a tough physical runner. He's a great player to have at that position.
Yeah. But all right, I'm going to blow through my last game. It was the Colts Jets. Kind of there was a fair amount of scoring. I feel like more than you would think. Anthony Richardson came back, 272 and a touchdown. He also had 32 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Josh Downs 5 for 84 and a touchdown. Alec Pierce 3 for 74. Pittman 5 for 46. Pittman once again disappointment. A lot of buzz going into this season.
Oh, definitely.
Pretty bust in my opinion. However, the one I want to talk about, which he won me some money and he won me my week, Breece Hall. Finally had a Breece Hall day.
There we go.
So I bet the under on rushing attempts at 15.5. He had 16. Lost me some money. But I bet the over under rushing yards was 80.5. I bet the under. So I kind of split even on that. But he had a rushing touchdown. He also was 7 for 43 with a receiving touchdown. Devontae Adams had a very quiet 6 for 72. And Garrett Wilson was kind of a non-factor with 4 for 18. And Rodgers, only 184 passing yards. I think Rodgers is cooked. But Breece, Dev, and even Garrett, I would still hang on to them because they can strike. Colts, if Anthony Richardson's in your free agents wire, I'd say pick him up. I think he's going to try and prove something from here on out.
There's always a chance for a big play with Anthony Richardson, and if you get bonus points in your leagues, then that's just all gravy.
Absolutely. But let's move forward because we are a little behind on time. So let's talk about our studs and duds. I will go first. I think it's pretty obvious. So for those who regularly keep in tune, my first stud's Jared Goff, who had 412 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, 39.7 fantasy points in my league. 0.3 away from me to have to shotgun a beer. Because if you get a hat trick, 3 touchdowns, you shotgun a beer. Or if you score 40 points, you shotgun a beer in my league. My second stud was Houston D. They had 23 fantasy points. Who do you guys have for studs right now? Jake, if you can go first.
Absolutely, yeah. I went with Josh Downs. He really surprised me this week because I have him in 2 leagues, and I looked at his stats compared to when Anthony Richardson plays and compared to when Joe Flacco plays. When Joe Flacco plays, he went off. When Anthony Richardson played, he was dog food. So I was like, there's no way I'm playing Josh Downs this week. And then he has 19 fantasy points. So I was shocked by that, that he went off like that. I did end up starting him because of a lack of options in 1 league. So thankfully, I at least got some of that from him. And my other stud's going to be Chris Boswell. He was the entire Steelers team this week. 24 fantasy points, 5 field goals, and it's not the first time that he's done it. And somehow they always win those games when he does that. So if you had Chris Boswell on your team, there's a good chance he drove you to victory this week.
Or at least made it interesting.
I was very fortunate to have Chris Boswell.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't expect him to be my leading scorer going into this.
No, never do.
All right, Dave, who are your studs?
So my first stud, my offensive stud, is going to be Bo Nix of the Broncos. There wasn't a whole lot of hype for Bo Nix at the beginning of the year. We saw how that offense was with Russell Wilson and Sean Payton. I think a lot of people had tempered expectations, but Bo Nix is turning into a very solid player. Since going back to week 5, he's only thrown 2 interceptions, and he's thrown, 13 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. And in this game against the Falcons, he had 307 yards, 4 touchdowns. That was good for 45 fantasy points in my league. He's not going to really help you on the ground in the ground game, but Bo Nix is turning into a pretty solid fantasy player. And he's only rostered in 76% of leagues on ESPN. So if your starting quarterback is on bye or you just need someone to fill in because of an injury here and there, look into Bo Nix because he's got a very compelling matchup this week against the Las Vegas Raiders. He played them back in week 5, threw for 206 yards, 2 touchdowns, no turnovers. So shout out to Bo Nix for having a good week and trying to piece together a late season surge for the Broncos.
You got a sneaky 4 or 5 rushing touchdowns too. So
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. All right, Dave, and who is your second stud?
The second stud, I'm going to go with the Minnesota Vikings defense. Again, they had a great, even though it was Tennessee, they did have 5 sacks and they did have an interception. They've had at least 1 interception in all but 1 game this year. And aside from kind of that really bad matchup against the Rams where there was a lot of points, they're a sack and turnover machine. So shout out to that Vikings defense. I know that was a little bit of a question mark because we knew what the Vikings offense was going to be at the beginning of the year, even although we weren't expecting Sam Darnold to still be here, but we knew that there were explosive players on that end.
Yeah.
The defense has always been a little bit suspect, but they've been phenomenal this year, and they're showing no signs of slowing down. And they have a pretty good schedule for the rest of the season. The only really tough games I think they have here are home against Green Bay, which is always tough, and at Detroit. That's going to be tough too, but they got some good matchups, so they should be a force for fantasy playoffs.
Absolutely. And who is your dud, Dave, this week?
So you actually mentioned it earlier. My dud was Garrett Wilson. I'm just pulling up his numbers.
4 for 18, I remember, because I have a lot of stock in the Jets this year because fantasy-wise, I kind of regret that decision, but yes, he was 4 for 18.
To make the playoffs this year, so.
Yeah, a little bit. Definitely a disappointing game for Garrett Wilson. That's 2 games in a row now that he's scored under 10 fantasy points.
Yeah.
But despite that, even with all the troubles that the Jets have had, Garrett Wilson is still wide receiver 5, and he's playing at a very high level. This was kind of definitely a disappointing game. You would expect a team like the Colts for the ball to be moving well, but so he's going into the Week 12 bye, and then he's got a home game against Seattle coming up in Week 13. So let's see if they can get back on track. Although there's lots of drama, lots of chaos going around in the Jets locker room.
Absolutely. All right, Jake, before we go into yours, we actually have a person in chat asking us a fantasy question. So trade away Gibbs, Jacobs, and Dell for Saquon, Garrett Wilson, and Amari. My running backs now are Akane and Gibbs, and my flex is Jacobs. So I'd be replacing Gibbs with Saquon and flexing Wilson instead of Jacobs. Wide receivers are Lamb, JJ, and Higgins. With your wide receiver core, I would say, I'm assuming that's Josh Jacobs.
Lamb and JJ?
Yeah.
Wow.
I would say as amazing as it would be getting Saquon, I would keep your team as is. Because Gibbs and Josh Jacobs are great running backs. And having a Kane as well as kind of like a flex option at running back, because Lamb, JJ, and Higgins, I'm assuming if you're in a 3 wide receiver league or a 2 wide receiver league with a flex, all 3 of them are starting. So you'd be Gibbs, Jacobs, and a Kane depending on matchups. I personally would say hold off on the trade, don't do it, keep your team as is.
Yeah, I would go with that too. And I think another thing with another benefit of having a Kane is how well he's done on the receiving side when Tua Tagovailoa has been healthy. There were those games when Tua was on IR and Kane kind of really busted those few weeks, but when Tua's there, he's been one of their leading receivers. So now that Tua's healthy, I think Kane's going to be a good player down the stretch.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd definitely be upgrading at receiver because Tank Dell's been a huge disappointment. But what are you going to do with Lamb, JJ, Higgins, Garrett Wilson, Amari Cooper? You can't start all 5 of those guys.
Right, someone's going to sit out.
Yeah, so it's probably not worth it. Maybe worth it this week with 8 teams on bye, but it's only for this week.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's our little nugget for that. Jake, backtracking now to our duds of last week. Who is your dud?
My dud is on the flip side of one of my studs, Chris Boswell. It's going to be Russell Wilson, who I'm so glad I had to start with Baker Mayfield on a bye with him putting up 6 fantasy points this week. He had 200 yards, no touchdowns, and a pick, I think is what he did. Absolutely nothing, just dog water this week.
Yeah.
After a huge performance last week. Let me find exactly what he had.
Yeah, gotta let Russ cook.
Yeah, you'd think. So I thought I was safe starting him with a bye out of Baker Mayfield, but he had 205, no touchdowns, and a pick this past week. He had 195, 3 touchdowns, and a pick the previous week.
All right.
So absolute flip of the script.
Yeah, no, absolutely. My dud is actually another person in that veteran category. Wide receiver, D-Hop. I know I said I was expecting that type of game out of him. I just wasn't expecting him to dominate like how he has, in a game or two with the Chiefs now. I was expecting him to be the 3 for 29 type guy, which he was. So a lot of people who have been starting him probably were pretty ticked off, and that's why I have him as my dud of last week.
Bill's defense is sneaky good.
That's true. That is very true. That is most likely the reason why. But he did kind of have a dud performance. But
they don't have a clear-cut number 1 corner, but they've been figuring it out.
Yeah, no, that's true. All right, let's kick it forward to our bold predictions for this week coming up. Not necessarily anything betting-wise, but if it is betting-related, you're more than welcome to do that. So, Dave, if you want to go first with your bold prediction this week.
I am going to say, so this was a gambling type stat. Jerry Jeudy, I'm going to say he's going to have under 42.5 receiving yards, minus 115. I don't believe in this Browns offense. I don't think 50, 60-yard touchdowns are sustainable. And with the way this Ravens team played, again, divisional matchups, those are always so tough. And the way the Ravens have played teams like Buffalo or even Pittsburgh, those big games, they've really held down their opponents at times. And I think it's going to be a dud this week for Jerry Jeudy.
Big flip on him then, from what he did last week. But I can see it.
Yes, definitely.
All right.
You good?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm just typing in the stuff.
You're quiet.
No, sorry. I was just typing the stuff. Jake, if you want to go with your bold prediction.
Absolutely. It's maybe not the boldest, but it's still an underdog pick this week. I think the 49ers go into Lambeau and upset the Packers and get themselves back on track. If everyone keeps saying that Jordan Love is kind of the second coming of Aaron Rodgers with the way he plays, his play style, if he taught him anything, it's probably also how to lose to the 49ers at home, just like Aaron Rodgers always does. So I like the 49ers going in to win that game in Green Bay.
All right, yeah. My bold prediction is, in my opinion, I think it's pretty bold. I think the Chargers are going to go into Baltimore and stun the Ravens in the Har Bowl.
The Har Bowl. Revenge game from both running backs?
Exactly.
You love your revenge games.
I know. All right, so we got the 15-minute warning left on the call, so let's go into our bets, kind of keep it short and sweet with our bet of the week and our 3-way roast beef parlay of the week. All right, so I'm going to start first. Mine, Titan Texans, I'm betting the over at 40.5.
I could see it. It's usually I would probably do the same thing, but usually ones that low are low for a reason. That's the
I
one thing that
know,
scares
but
me.
if you,
They're trying to bait you into it.
it could be another 34-10 win by the Texans, and that hits the over.
Yeah, that's true.
So
That's true.
that's why I'm betting that. Last time I bet an over under like that, it was Texans Patriots at 40.5, and it hit.
Yeah, true.
All right, Jake, if you want to go into your bet of the week.
Sure, I'm looking at another over with you as well. I think I like Dallas and Washington to go over 45.5. Washington defense generally, I would say, has a good matchup here, but I don't think that they're the most talented defense in the league. So I think Dallas might find a way to get themselves 14 to 20 points somewhere in there, and I think Washington will maybe 35 to 40 points on Dallas's defense this week. So I think they should slam that over.
All right, sounds good. And Dave, your bet of the week.
Yes, I have the Eagles and the Rams here. I have the over-under as 48.5. I'm going to go with the over. I believe in both of these offenses. Saquon Barkley and A.J. Brown have been explosive, and Matt Stafford showed what he can do with a healthy Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, and you can't discount Kyron Williams as well. I think this is going to be a shootout on Sunday Night Football, so definitely take the over 48.5.
Absolutely. All righty. And now let's go into the three-way parlays. My three-way parlay, it's not a super juicy one, but it's still pretty decent. I have Drake May, 225 plus passing yards, Jahmyr Gibbs anytime, and Kyron Williams anytime. Drake May's 225 plus is plus 140. Jahmyr Gibbs anytime is a minus 190, and Kyron anytime is a minus 185, totaling that three-legger at plus 464.
Solid.
Nice.
Yeah. And Dave, if you want to go into yours.
Yeah, mine's not a huge parlay either. I got these odds from DraftKings. I have Tampa Bay money line against the Giants minus 238, Miami money line against the Patriots minus 345, and then Denver money line versus the Raiders at minus 230. So that comes out to a plus 162.
That Bucks game scares me a little bit for some reason. I don't know why.
I would say
really?
the same thing.
Why.
I almost put that game into any of my bet of the week or parlay, and I was like, I'm getting weird vibes. I'm gonna
I
avoid
would
it.
never bet the
Yeah,
Giants in that scenario, but I just feel like you're ended up trapped. I don't know. I don't know why.
Yeah, Tyrone Tracy might have a big game.
Tommy
I think he's
DeVito.
gotta take it
Yeah.
over there. Tommy DeVito, yeah, Tommy Coughlin.
If I had a soundboard that was working, I'd play some classic Italian music right now.
Yeah.
All right.
By no means saying take the Giants, but it just scares me.
Yeah. And Jake, what is your three-legger at?
I got a little prop parlay here. I got Terry McLaurin anytime touchdown. I think he's going to cook Trayvon Diggs this week. I got Rachaad White over 20.5 receiving yards. He's really been the receiving back in Tampa Bay with Bucky Irving kind of taking more of the rushing role. And DeAndre Swift over 58.5 rushing yards. I think they got to get back to basics if they want to try to win games in Chicago. They're home, probably going to be cold in Chicago. Just grind the ball.
What was the over for D Swift?
That is plus 582.
Well,
Oh, Swift, what's his
yeah,
total?
With
58.5.
Okay. Can you tell me what the McLaurin anytime was at?
Minus 105. Pretty much even.
And Rachaad White over 20.5 receiving yards.
20.5, yeah. Both of those are 115. Rachaad and DeAndre Swift's odds.
All right. And totaling at?
Plus 582.
That's not bad. I like that. The DeAndre Swift one is a little interesting for me. Terry's been, didn't he bagel like 2 weeks ago or last week, something like that? So
Yeah, last week he had a bad game. I think
He had,
just
like,
one
2
catch
points or
on
something,
Thursday
right?
night.
yeah, so I do think he comes back and strikes, so I like that bet a lot.
Yeah, I think Dallas' secondary is super overrated too, so I think he can score against him for sure.
Absolutely. All right, so normally I start the segment with this, but I'm going to end it at this because I wasn't sure what time-wise, because we were up against the clock. So going into week 10, because if you remember at the beginning, I said we could not do week 11. I was having a lot of technical problems. So going into week 10, we were at negative 59 cents on the pot. It's not good. We
No.
kind of by like week 7 we hit a peak high. We were in profit a good amount. And week 10 I had another 3-way with 2 guests, a little 3-way hosting parlay, whatever term joke plug-in you want to do. And so we went 0-3 on bets and 0-3 on parlays. So we were at minus 659. And, you know, if we were on last week, we probably would have hit some bets. But that's fine. Whatever. We're still at minus 659. This week, I feel like 5 of these 6 bets are going to hit. So we're going to be well into the positive going into next week. So I'm pretty excited for that. All very attainable bets. So I'm excited. Guys, thank you for coming on. I appreciate your flexibility and leniency and everything between last week and this week. It's got some, as you know, computer issues, so it is what it is, but I appreciate you guys being so flexible.
No problem.
Thank you.
And so yeah, I only got two more things left this season, and then the cast is done for the year. Oh, someone gave me a follow. I appreciate that. I was not expecting to hear that sound, but thanks for the follow. I think that's on Twitch though, which is interesting. Because I had a football one for the cast. So, regardless, appreciate it, which I should plug in. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like this live stream and hit the sub button, because we will have 2 more episodes live, and then we will do a video for our end of season. We'll probably do a free agency special video, and we'll maybe even live stream, and then we'll do it again with the draft. So, guys, thanks for coming on. Hope you have a great rest of your night. I know you guys are in the same area as me, so be careful especially with all those wildfires we've been dealing with. I legit smell it in my basement, so it's pretty crazy. So be safe.
Lots of rain tomorrow. Hopefully that'll put an end to.
Yeah, a lot of rain's coming in tomorrow, and even a little bit of Friday. So hopefully that helps put out the fires, literally, not figuratively. But yeah, be safe out there, guys. Thanks for coming on, and have a good night.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
All right, see you guys. All right, so I know I just kind of rushed it there. Once again, appreciate everyone who watched, who's been chilling. Don't forget to like this live stream, hit the sub button, because we're going to be here. We're sticking around, but that's going to be it. So I will see you next one.